Welcome to Lorien Live. I'm Chelyn, Salesforce Partnership Manager, and I have a very special guest with me today. Katherine Tarazona is an expert recruiter in the UX UI space. Welcome, Katherine.
Hi, Chelyn. Thank you so much for having me today and giving me this opportunity to talk about UI UX candidates and hopefully sharing some good insight.
Fantastic. Well, why don't you give us a little bit of background about your journey and how you became an expert in this space and really created such a passion for this particular part of the STEM industry?
Absolutely. Myself, a little bit of background is that I've been recruiting for about a year and a half now. A few months actually after I started recruiting, I was given the opportunity to work on a UI UX job, and I really didn't know what it was. And it's such a unique space because when you're speaking to these candidates, they're able to show you something that they've really built, and they can point out things and say, "Hey, I've contributed in this way." And it's a very tangible thing that you're able to look at and when you're speaking with them. And I was very intrigued by that and the whole process, and just getting the opportunity to speak with very creative people around the world with such a hands-on part in a lot of these products that we really use all of the time was something that really I appreciated. So that's kind of why I got into the UX space itself.
It is such a unique combination of that technical expertise and curiosity that people have, along with that more creative side. So it
Right.
certainly is a, a unique space. But why don't
Yeah.
you tell us a little bit about just how the landscape has changed over the years, how it's evolved, and particularly for this space? I know that as we moved through the pandemic, it created some unique dynamics, and just give us a little insight.
Absolutely. I feel like a lot of times, people really focus. Of course, we went on that shift from working in person to remotely, and a lot of times in the design space, the UI UX space in general, people, they like to work from home, but they also like to collaborate. So I feel like that was kind of a big shift going to remote working. You have to, be in person for certain things and be able to, sketch out, user flows or kind of work through that process in person. So that was a big shift for sure. And as far as kind of the past 6 months, even I've seen such a huge, I guess, initiative or push for companies to add people to their UX teams. A lot of design positions coming out, research roles, content design, even architecture. So there's been quite a push of UX roles coming out most recently.
I know that for many people, it can be confusing looking at job titles and job descriptions and feeling that perhaps, I may or may not have the education or the background based on a job description. Could you share a little more about just your philosophy around viewing job descriptions more as a wish list and how people should just approach it?
Absolutely. I think a lot of times in job descriptions, especially for candidates, it can be very hard to really dissect that and figure out what the heck a hiring manager wants. A lot of times, what they really want is intangible. They want that personality, they want that design thinking. They want someone who's very curious and able to, be a big problem solver and kind of work through processes when they're given a task or maybe a design challenge. And I like to say that a job description is kind of like a wish list because you're looking at both parts of the person and the skills that they've had, their hands-on skills. I actually have a really great example of someone that I placed back in June of 22. He went through, Google Coursera UX design certification program, and he went through that in February. 4 months later, I chatted with him. We got to place him in a direct hire UX architect role, and it's a really cool success story to be able to see how transferable your skills really can be, especially if you come from a different type of background that might, maybe you're transitioning between graphic design into UX and kind of, getting to learn the landscape of what that really looks like. A lot of times I feel like people might shy away from job descriptions if they feel like they might not be experienced enough. But that's kind of, what I'm here for, is to help people understand how they can apply their skills and how they can really, show their best selves and to these hiring managers.
I've certainly noticed a shift recently, kind of across STEM, of a lot of discussion around sort of that degree, college degrees, and very specific education requirements. And now a bit
Right.
more of companies grappling with changing and how to be more open and accessible to people with perhaps or non-traditional backgrounds. What are
Right.
you seeing and hearing?
Absolutely. I see it all the time. People have, General Assembly certifications. They have the Google Coursera certifications, like I mentioned. A lot of times, candidates, they might not have access to, get a bachelor's degree. I mean, gosh, you talk to people who, you might not have a certain opportunity just based on, where you live or your background or what have you. And a lot of these boot camps, they give you a good opportunity to learn in an environment where you can still work a full-time job. Like, think about a single mom who has to take care of their child during the day, and they can kind of go through these courses during the night. It really gives that accessibility to people and gives them an opportunity to be able to be successful in a field that they're passionate about, but maybe they didn't have those opportunities when maybe it was time to make a decision, so to speak.
Yes, definitely. Well, and as somebody who talks to a lot of candidates and then obviously work closely with hiring managers and companies looking for talent, what advice do you have for people that are in that category that perhaps their education and direct work experience doesn't line up well? Would you recommend things like portfolios, or what else have you seen that helps somebody really bring forward, I can do this work, I'm excited about it, give me a shot?
Absolutely. I think just being able to advocate for yourself, having the confidence to know that this is what you really want to do. I think passion goes a long way, as well as personality. Just being able to be that type of person to say, hey, I've always been a creative thinker. I've always been very analytical. I know how to make things happen when I'm given a problem. So those are more so of like the soft skills, I would say, to really advocate for yourself. But even talking about hard skills, like you mentioned, working very heavily on your portfolio. It can be a daunting task. There's a lot that goes into it, and when you're looking at portfolios, I would definitely urge anyone who's maybe like a younger professional, or even someone who might have been off the job market for quite some time and they're just getting back into it. Take time and make sure that that portfolio is a good representation of who you are. A lot of times, as people, of course, we're ever evolving, but I think one of the most important things is to kind of treat your portfolio in the same way that you would treat a client. You want to advocate and take your time and look at the details, make sure that you're paying attention to like information architecture, where things are situated on the page, how many case studies you present, and also definitely giving some versatility in the different projects you've worked on. I feel like a lot of times, if you maybe gear yourself towards a certain industry, you can be kind of doing a disservice to yourself if you might be open to other industries as well.
Yeah, that's great advice. And as you work with candidates and certainly you're out exploring and finding, sourcing candidates, looking at their LinkedIn profiles, looking at resumes, and then working directly with candidates, getting them prepared for interviews or
Mhm.
negotiating. What kind of advice do you give to have a resume line up well with a particular opportunity, and then perhaps kind of along that some adjustments to LinkedIn profiles if they're really excited about a particular position? What advice do you have around that combination of the resume and LinkedIn profile lining up
Mhm.
and setting them up for success to stand out?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of times people think that less is more. Of course, you don't want to overwhelm your resume, you don't want to overwhelm your LinkedIn, but at the same time, really showing what you've done it makes such a difference, right? Just making sure that you're saying, okay, have I done a dashboard redesign? Was I working on a customer portal? Did I, do a whole website redesign for the homepage or a landing page? And really diving into what have you really done. I think a lot of times people on their resumes, they might walk through their process, or they might just mention, the people that they collaborate with. But the actual projects that you're working on, whether that be like customer facing, internal facing, there are a lot of good, insights there, and it can really, make you stand out from the crowd if you really, monopolize on those and try to show off the awesome things that you've been able to do.
Love that. No, we had a fun conversation yesterday and just getting prepared for today. We're at different stages in our careers, and we had, I think, a really rich discussion around social media and how to really tap into the communities, that UX UI community, how to learn, how to stay cutting edge. And I wanted you to just give your insight on, and I loved the conversation we had around TikTok and being really open-minded and some unique ways to learn. So why don't you just give us how you've learned, how you use it, and perhaps the ways that you've seen people be open-minded. I think also for people maybe a little further along in their career, it's also a good opportunity to show that
Yeah.
you are really open to learning and staying current.
Absolutely. I think first of all, if anyone wants to stay current, I think it's a great idea just to go to the source that you enjoy learning information from. So whether that be reading, a lot of people like to read books. I'm not a huge book reader, but I do like to absorb information through more visual outlooks, I would say. So I like to learn from TikTok, from Instagram, YouTube. I really like to, watch people and see what they can do because I am such a visual learner. And I think that a lot of people, they can, we were speaking about this yesterday, really curate their pages to be focused on what they're interested in. So for instance, on TikTok, a lot of times I'll watch maybe design challenges or portfolio reviews and really see what people are looking at, what people are focusing on. Because although I'm not, necessarily a hands-on designer, I do want to be the most well-educated that I can be in this field. And if that's the avenue that works for you, I think that's the best way to, stay up to date and really communicate with these different communities.
Yeah, I love that. And getting connected in with thought leaders and thinking
Mhm.
about as your career develops or if you're making a pivot to become a thought leader if you're interested in that and see how that
Right.
works. It's certainly a great way to stand out and make connections in this virtual world that we're in.
Right, and a lot of these people are so creative. I talk to candidates where they have their own podcasts, and they might, have a weekly podcast come out with a colleague of theirs, or they bring on people from different teams that they've worked on in the past. And it's so interesting because these people are so creative, and they give you pretty much anything and everything that you could want when you're thinking about, just kind of staying connected and always learning about the newest and best things to do.
I love that. And what would you say in terms of the candidates that you work with, the feedback you hear? What is your best advice around really preparing for interviews in this space and
Mhm.
ways to approach to show design thinking and to really answer questions in a way that helps the candidate stand out and be selected?
Definitely. I would absolutely give the advice to just know what you've done. I think a lot of times people might shy away from like documentation because it's not necessarily the most exciting task of the day. But when you're really working on a project for 6 months to a year, it's really hard to kind of think back and say, "Oh, why did I decide to do this rendition versus this one?" Or why did we decide to go back to the drawing board? What did the developers say? What did the researchers give in terms of insights based on the users that we're looking at? Being able to look back at that documentation and say, oh, this is why, and being able to kind of remind yourself over time, definitely, makes a huge difference. And that being said, just kind of going through and knowing what you've done in the past being able to really explain your different projects that you've worked on makes such a difference when you're speaking with managers. They don't care about just the aesthetics. They want to know about why you've done something. So, yeah.
What kind of, if you were to say, what are some of the missteps that people take when they, because certainly your part of your process talking with candidates is maybe not a formal interview, but it's that experience, that interview experience back and forth. But then in formal interviews, when you get feedback about candidates, what are some of the missteps that people make?
Yeah, I think a huge one is just, not explaining yourself enough, or maybe thinking that they're in this industry, they know this already. I'm going to skip over that part and go to the end. No, don't do that. You worked hard on something. You want to be able to say, I did this, 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 and this, and kind of show them, the whole pathway, not just the trees or the garden, right? I like to think of it in like first grade when you're taking a test and your teacher says, act like, I'm not from this planet. I don't know anything at all. Explain the answer as best as you can. That is one of the huge, pointers I would give to just focus on. Go through your answer as if they didn't know anything, right? So I think that's huge.
That's perfect. What about at a point of getting offers? Do you find that that people either sort of missed opportunities or maybe, things that looking back we wish they had made different choices around that kind of that offer stage?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, of course, every person that I talk to, I want them to accept the offer that I'm giving them. But I think definitely in the design space, you have to be very cognizant, both as a recruiter and a hiring manager, that some projects aren't for some people. Some people are more excited about working on mobile applications versus like a homepage redesign. I mean, it just kind of depends on what the person is looking for. And I think a lot of times that can kind of be overlooked during the interview process, or maybe not something that they really touched on during those questions, like that Q&A part of the interview. That's, I would say, of course, just something that comes with recruiting and something that comes with job searching. You want to make sure that someone not only gets a job that they enjoy, but they stay around for a long time and really build that, relationship with the company and the team.
Yes, absolutely. And the demand right now is outpacing the availability of
Right.
candidates. So, what advice do you have for hiring manager or people on teams that know that they have positions to either backfill or growth positions? Like, what are some unique ways that people could go about finding great candidates?
Definitely. I would say speed is of the essence. It is very, very difficult to expect someone to be around maybe for 2 to 3, maybe 4 rounds of interviews over the span of a month and a half or even longer than that. I think just being cognizant and aware of people's time and where they spend it makes such a difference. And I've been very fortunate to work with hiring managers that are very aware of that, which definitely helps. I think just being able to, on the recruiter side of things, being able to advocate for that for the candidate, or maybe vice versa, making sure that, the hiring manager's time is also incorporated into that, interview process is very, very helpful for sure.
Excellent. I think being aligning with recruiters is often such a great way to do that, especially
Right.
somebody like you that's and integrated into various communities and have built up that trust. And maybe you could share a little bit from the perspective of the day in the life of a recruiter. I think sometimes
Yeah.
people get a little nervous about what is the job of the recruiter. There's some tough stories out there, but I think many people, unless they've had that experience, they may not understand like what is your like a day in the life, a week in life look like for you as a recruiter? And then how do you really advocate for candidates, and how can, whether it's you or another individual, a good ally, what, just kind of pull the curtains aside and give us a
Yeah.
view.
Yeah, let's yank it off. Rip off the Band-Aid.
Love it.
I No, I love, talking to people. That's what I do all day, every day. There's, of course, like, I guess more so housekeeping type of things you have to go through. Like I do payroll and things like that. But I also, work very, very closely with candidates to see if this is something that they want to do. I think every job is a little bit different and there's, different aspects. Some people are open to hybrid, some people are open to only remote roles. It really kind of depends. And kind of just having these deep conversations with people and getting to know them is the biggest thing I would say that I focus on as a recruiter. I don't want to just know, is your experience a match, but I want to know, is this the next step in your career? Does this make sense financially? Does the commute make sense? Is it an hour-long drive every day? There's different things that go into these conversations that I think maybe can be overlooked sometimes. And as far as kind of the back end of things, I like to check in with people as much as I can, and even after you've been hired or after you go through the interview process, that conversation doesn't stop. Even if maybe an offer isn't extended, I like to, keep that relationship, pass them along to another opportunity if I can, because there's always going to be another team looking for, UX. It's not going anywhere. So there's a lot that you can really gain from that, and just continually building your network and being able to advocate for people wherever you can.
Yeah, absolutely. And what do you find over time? So I know from our teams, there's often candidates that will stay connected for years and just
Yeah.
move to different opportunities and organizations. How do you build those relationships? And for candidates out there, how might they even go about finding a UX UI recruiter and get your attention, or, get someone's attention? How do they even know if it's going to be someone that they want to work with?
Right. I think it's all about having that initial conversation, really, and getting down to like brass tacks, so to speak. So you really want to, get that personality across and really show who you are so that I can know, okay, this person is open to this, this, and this. They don't want this at all. It for me, my job is a lot like just kind of fixing a puzzle and putting the pieces together. And so whenever I talk with the candidate, I'm very open to saying, I know this might not be the right fit, but I have other opportunities coming down the line that I know about, or maybe in the future, I know that I would be able to reach out to you. Is that okay? And just, I think the biggest advice that I can give to, professionals in UX space is just being open to opportunities. I think a lot of people might close themselves off if they're maybe really happy in the place that they might be in, but just being open to new opportunities as they come is so important. And even if you're not really looking to make a change, just being able to have that conversation doesn't hurt.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And what would you say in terms of the trends that you are seeing and hearing about, perhaps the type of roles that are increasing in demand, that you're seeing that people are having trouble filling roles, and those are always a great place to consider
Mhm.
building some more expertise or leaning into those opportunities if it's a good fit.
Definitely. I think a lot of people are actually really going into product design, end to end design. They want people who can wear a lot of hats and aren't afraid to wear a lot of hats. It's always great to specialize in one thing, but it's also really cool to say that you're a versatile professional. I think that, people who are able to work through the research process and then go into the design process and then even communicating with developers if they know a little bit of web programming, it's so helpful. And just like leveraging yourself to be able to be indispensable for a team makes a world of difference. And that's something that, it's definitely worth taking a look into, even if it's maybe just on the side learning a little bit of HTML or learning a little bit of the research process and how you can really, put yourself in that position.
Yeah, I love that. And if you were to say, perhaps a couple of groups or thought leaders or people that inspire you as you've explored UX UI, is there anyone that you would point people to, or like communities that you would recommend?
Yeah, absolutely. I love, all of the communities on LinkedIn, first of all. People post jobs in all of the UX groups that I'm in, and they might, post a different project that they're working on. Also, if you just stay connected through social media, a lot of times people have like open source projects where they'll ask you to come in and design a certain aspect or maybe help out with what you think about, a certain feature, a certain, development aspect. It's very interesting to be able to work on those types of platforms. In terms of, thought leaders, the UX Collective is great to go on there and, learn anything and everything about UX. I think just kind of finding your person and your avenue that you like to, learn your information from, just go with it. If that's your niche, then just own it and go with it.
Perfect. And I know that you had a recent blog that was published on the Lorien site. And this QR code, for any of you who are watching live or watching the replay, if you scan that QR code, it'll take you right there. You want to tell us just a little bit about what's available and the resources? I know we have limited time today, and there's so much meaty goodness in that
Yeah.
post.
Absolutely. I would definitely say, take a look at that blog post, anyone who's watching, even if I feel like even if you're a senior level designer, even if you're just starting out, it could be helpful just to read through those, insights and a little bit about what's on there. There's some tips, there's some I guess like softwares and, different programs that you might be able to utilize on there that just list them out and gives you access to see what kind of, programs are out there to be learning about different things just to think about whenever you're trying to get into the UX space. And even if you know nothing about UX, it's just great to go on there and just read a little bit about it and see, what UX really means.
Yeah, I love that. And I think so often it's taking advantage. There's so much that's out there if we can
Mhm.
dive in and really look around and get the right terminology and see
Right.
the themes. We have a question, and it's a great one. So it's regarding newcomers, and in this
Yeah.
case, Maria is in Canada, and she's curious if it's, and I know you're not in the Canadian market specific, but I think you'll have a great answer. Is it
Yeah.
essential to have Canadian experience or finish Canadian courses, or any other tips for newcomers? So what would you say in terms of maybe geographic specific information?
Yeah, I would say, these in the UX space, these skills are so transferable. You might not need necessarily to have like Canadian experience or, United States experience. I've talked to a lot of people who, maybe they might have been born in a different country and they come to the US. They have so much to give because they have, different perspectives and different cultures that they're coming from, and bringing that into the United States, like, area, and just kind of sharing that experience with people is so interesting, especially, you're working with so many different types of people and you're really focusing on humans. It doesn't necessarily need to be a certain, nationality or a certain whatever. It's very inclusive, and that's what is really so cool about UX, because it is human centered and you can really do, anything with it. There's a lot of transferable skills that you bring to the table.
Perfect. And what about someone who is looking to move into a different category of job? So perhaps they are someone that's been an individual contributor and they're interested in moving into leadership or more senior
Mhm.
positions, or perhaps somebody who's in a life transition and are looking to not have such scope of responsibility and move into more of an individual contributor, or someone pivoting. In those
Right.
situations where there's kind of a mismatch between what the company may be looking for and
Mhm.
what's obviously on your resume or LinkedIn profile, how would you approach that? What advice have you given, or perhaps what feedback have you
Yeah.
heard?
Absolutely. I've been in both situations. So I've talked to some candidates who, they've been a manager, they've had that management experience, and they're looking to get more into like that hands-on, like nitty-gritty design. The thing that made them very passionate in the first place. I've been in that situation, and really just making sure that you're having that conversation with people. I usually ask, have you mentored people? Have you led teams? What does that kind of look like for you? Because it can vary. Just being open to having that conversation with candidates as a recruiter is very important, because even if you have managed in the past, you might not want to do that. And very similarly, people who are looking to get into management or leadership positions, be open yourself, have that conversation with your managers or your higher ups, and leverage yourself to be able to do that. A lot of times you can do extracurricular type things, which is really cool. You can come on to these organizations and say, hey, I want to mentor junior level designers, or I want to join this nonprofit to help out with X, Y, and Z. Just look and see what's out there around you. And luckily, since we are in this post COVID mainly remote space, there's a lot of opportunities out there to get involved with.
Yes, definitely. And I do think that job hunting is a bit of a grind. And I think for many people, it is hard, and it's hard to hear no, and it's part of
Yeah.
the process. But how do you help the candidates that you work with keep their energy up and bring that sort of lightness and energy and positivity to the interviews? Of just what's kind of
Mhm.
those when you have those behind the, on the phone connections where somebody's struggling, what advice do you give them?
Yeah, I try to be as transparent as I can, and I know unfortunately we've been dealing with a lot of layoffs. I think as a whole in the United States most recently, it's very disheartening, and I always try to be very cognizant of that, very aware that if you're in that situation, there's other stuff out there. There's always going to be more. Companies are never going to get rid of UX, because where will their products be without good UX? And people go to these products time and time again if there's good UX, but without it, you have no users. So just being
Right.
aware of that, I think I can definitely have that conversation with people very often. And it is unfortunate, but just keeping them light, keeping them open, not letting them know that this is a safe space, and that you know I understand the value and what they bring to the table, and I'm going to be their partner, their advocate, whatever I can do to help them.
That's wonderful. It's a great advice, and I certainly know from my past, I did not appreciate the value of working with a recruiter and really understanding what a gateway to opportunities that is, and
Right.
just really encourage people to take the opportunity to at least listen and learn, and having an ally and somebody that's keeping their ears and eyes open for you is a wonderful thing.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with, passing along other people as well. I talk to a lot of candidates that, even they might not be open to a certain opportunity, they pass along their colleagues' LinkedIn. They pass along my email so that their friends or their, previous coworkers can go ahead, send me their portfolio or their resume, and I can connect with them. There's a lot of different opportunities out there, as long as you're, advocating for others and just kind of passing along opportunities as they come.
Well, Catherine, I'm so grateful for you joining me today. It's been a
Yes,
lot of
thank
fun
you.
talking with you. And the UX UI space and this whole category is such an exciting one with a very bright future.
I definitely agree. And thank you so much, Chelyn. I'm just excited, to have this platform. And I definitely encourage any of you watching to, reach out with me, connect with me. Let me see your portfolio so I can have a conversation with you. And definitely hope that we get to do this again soon.
Absolutely. And as we say goodbye, for those of you watching, Catherine's information is going to be on the screen in just a moment, so you can reach out to her. Feel free to connect with both of us on LinkedIn, leave a comment. We will venture back in and answer any, and then Catherine's direct information will be here. And then we will see you next Thursday. We have an exciting Lorien Live for STEM Council for Good, and finding out more about how you can get involved in a way that benefits others and yourself as an ally, a candidate, or an organization looking to make change. So bye for now.